Hi guys, and welcome to today's Money Honeys videos. This is going to be another one of my Money Honeys Buzz videos, which is me talking about a particular topic that relates to money and finances and hopefully will be of interest to you. Today I'm going to talk about, as you can tell from the title, renting versus buying. I will let you know right up front that I am not going to tell you which one you should do. It is a very personal decision based on a number of different factors. What I want to do in this video is make sure that you have all the information that you can possibly have to make the right decision for you. I'm going to talk about some things that you'll want to think about when you're approaching the decision of whether you should rent or whether you should buy a home. I'm going to talk about factors that are both financial as well as factors that are psychological. I'll start this video off by saying I have had experience being both a renter and an owner. As most people are when they first go out into the world on their own. When I had my first job, I rented an apartment. I rented a couple of different apartments, and then after I got married, my husband and I bought a home. I lived there for a number of years. My husband and I parted ways. I kept the home and then ended up selling the home and coming here where I am renting a one-bedroom condo. So I've had the opportunity to go from being a renter to a first-time home buyer to a home seller and then back to a renter again. So a lot of this is based in my knowledge of being a Canadian, specifically in Ontario, as a renter and a buyer, but these are the kinds of questions and ideas that you'll want to think about as you approach what kind of living situation you want to have. I'm going to start with the financial aspects of renting versus buying. And I'm just going to start by throwing out a phrase that I hear all the time that just drives me up the wall. And that is people talking about rent as throwing your money away. Rent is not throwing your money away. Rent is paying for a product or service that you use. I mean, we do this kind of thing all the time. If you use Netflix or Spotify, do you think that you are throwing away your money on that? No, what you're doing is paying for the service. You could go out and buy the movie on DVD, or you could buy it on iTunes, or you could go out and buy the CD. But what you're choosing to do instead is pay for your use of it, because maybe you don't want to have a whole bunch of clutter in your house, or you think you're only going to listen to it for a certain amount of time. Renting is the same. Neither one is necessarily better or worse than the other, in my opinion, but they have different benefits and drawbacks. I also think there's a perception out there, and I've heard to it referred to sometimes as the life script, about what we should do in life. And the idea is that you should finish school, you should, if you want to go to college or university, you should get a job, you should meet a significant other, you should get married, you should have a house, you should have kids. This is how your life is supposed to go. And often buying a home is in there. It's just almost expected that you are going to buy a house. That is what you do when you grow up and you are an adult. But I'd like to challenge that. I mean, our lives can be whatever it is that we want them to be. You don't have to follow anyone else's expectations. And if renting is something that you prefer or it fits in your lifestyle, then don't let anyone pressure you into saying that you should be doing something. If you are thinking about buying a home, the first thing I would say is that it is necessary to have your financial foundation in order. If you have not yet watched my Money Honey series, then I would suggest you go back and watch that. Basically, I talk about a pathway to follow to get all of your finances in order. You will have budgets under control, you will have some extra money set away, you will be saving for retirement, and you'll have an understanding about how to reach goals, and buying a house can be one of those goals. Oftentimes when you hear people talk about renting versus buying, they talk about being able to spend the same amount on a mortgage as you do on rent, and wouldn't you rather be investing that into a house for yourself rather than throwing it away? Now, what I want to talk about are the actual costs involved in renting, the costs involved in buying, and the costs involved in living in your own home, and what you should consider in there. We had talked in an earlier video about how much your housing should be as a percentage of your overall budget. And we had talked about that being 35%. I've heard people talk about all of your costs for housing all in being 35% of your net or your take-home income. Some people also talk about more specifically just your mortgage amount. If you're buying a home, making sure that your mortgage is no more than 25% of your net or take-home income. Basically what you're doing there is leaving about 10% for all the extras that you're paying for your housing on top of your mortgage. But let's keep that 35% number there. So let's say that in your budget you are trying to keep 35% for housing. If you are renting, that 35% needs to include your rent, your utilities, depending on whether they are included or not. Sometimes your parking, if you have to pay on top of your rent for parking, and also your apartment or house insurance. If you do not have apartment or renter's insurance, go and get it now. It is incredibly important. It's not expensive, and you should just have it, full stop, have insurance. And a lot of places, or at least a lot of rental buildings that I have lived in, will make you give them a copy of your renter's insurance before you can even rent. If you're renting from an individual, they might not think to do that, but just always make sure that you have renter's insurance. So those are the things that you need to consider in that 35%. And rent can be pretty steady. It's different things in different areas, but in a lot of cases, there's only so high they can raise your rent in a year. You pretty much have it pretty known what your rent is going to be, and that is your 35%. Yes, that 35% is all going away to somewhere, but in exchange for that, you are getting a place to live. When it comes to owning your own place, either a house or a condo, there are a number of other costs to think about. As I said, oftentimes people just think about the mortgage amount, and you're thinking that mortgage is the same amount as my rent. I can afford this. And I just want to make sure, if you are planning for buying a home, that you think about all the actual month-to-month and year-to-year costs that are involved in owning a house. That all needs to be factored into that 35%. You need to factor in a mortgage because most of us have to pay a mortgage. Chances are that you don't have 100% of the money that you need to buy a house. If you do, great. But if not, you're paying a mortgage. You may also be paying mortgage insurance, and that depends on how much of a down payment you put towards the home. Here in Ontario, I believe that it is 25% that you need to put down on your down payment for your home in order to not have to pay mortgage insurance. There is also something similar to this in the States, but check what the actual individual percentages are. But you should know that you may or may not have to pay this depending on how much of a down payment you have. Whether you are in a condo or a house, you will have to pay property tax, and this can be quite significant. Where I lived, which was an inexpensive town for property tax, I ended up spending $200 a month on it. Now, the way it was actually paid is I did it 3 times per year, but in order to save up for those times I had to pay, it was $200 a month. It was basically just over $2,000 a year just for my property taxes. If you are living in a condo, you will be paying condo fees. And these can change, and significantly. So if you are buying a condo that is brand new, they will oftentimes have the condo fees a little bit lower as a selling feature. And then as the condo ages a few years, as things start to wear out, you will find that those condo fees increase, especially if there are things like swimming pools or fountains, gyms. If there's a lot of amenities in your condo, you can expect those condo fees to go up. You will also be paying utilities, different amounts depending on what's included and what's not. In my house, it was hydro, water, and gas that I needed to pay. And I know some people where if they are heating with hydro in Ontario right now, they are paying $600 to $800 a month in the winter for their heating. So it's very important to know what your utilities are going to be on average before you choose to buy somewhere and factor that into your budget. You still will be paying home insurance. Basically, anywhere you live, you are going to be paying insurance. And something people often forget to factor into their budgets, and it is significant when you are thinking about owning your own place, is the maintenance aspect. Now, if it's a condo, it may not be as much, but you do have to maintain what's in the condo. So appliances, any upgrades you want to make, fixing anything inside the condo is going to be up to you. If you own a home, then you are responsible for all of the maintenance costs, and it can be significant. I've seen some people say, and this really depends on what the market is like for housing in your area, you can expect to spend between 1% and 5% of the total cost of your home per year in maintenance. So when I owned a home, I lived there for, I want to say about 8 years, and in that time, the roof was replaced, the air conditioner was replaced, the balcony that I had on it was replaced. The water heater flooded my basement, so I had to have drywall and carpeting replaced. I ended up doing all the countertops. There are things that you need to fix because they are broken, and there are things that you need to keep upgrading or keep up if you want your home to maintain its value. Things like windows and floors, carpeting, and also outside the home, so gardening, landscaping, things like that. It is a significant cost that not a lot of people take into account. So all of that needs to fall within your 35% of your net income. Now that I've thrown all of that at you, you also need to consider how much it costs you to get into a home that you are buying and get out of a home. So what most people think about is the down payment, and there is going to be that factor, and as I said, it depends on how much of a down payment you have, on other things like mortgage insurance. A lot of times, especially in hot housing markets, people want to just have the minimum amount of down payment because if you wait another year as you save up, the prices are even higher. Things are a little crazy in markets like Toronto and Vancouver right now, and people are trying to get in with minimum amounts of down payment. In addition to your down payment, there are some other costs. Now, when you are a buyer, you don't have to pay realtors' fees or anything like that, which is quite nice. But there are some other costs. Depending on where you live, there may be land transfer tax. You're probably going to be paying a lawyer for things like your mortgage, your property transferal, all that kind of stuff. You can ask a realtor about how much that's going to cost. You do want to pay for a home inspection. That is important. And depending on, where you are, that can be a few $100s to get that done. Very important to do. And then there are costs like moving costs. And if you are establishing yourself in a larger place than you have lived before, or perhaps having a place with a yard that you didn't before, there's going to be some costs for things like lawnmowers and hoses and things to maintain the home that you may not have paid for previously. So when you are planning, and I will put a link down below to how to make yourself a plan for your goals, not only do you need to set up a future budget for what it's going to be costing you per month, per year when you're living in the home, but you also need to factor in how much you are saving not only for a down payment, but for those initial costs. A lot of people also talk about a home being an investment, and in a way it is, for two different reasons. First of all, a home is kind of forced savings in a way. If you are paying down a mortgage, as you are paying it down, the amount of the asset that you own is going up. So if you are somebody who is terrible at saving money, if you are owning a home and paying off a mortgage, you are increasing your net worth. However, housing markets can be volatile, as we saw in the United States in 2006, 7, and 8. Housing prices don't always go up. I mean, on general, over time they do, but if your house is your biggest asset or your only asset, you don't want to be in a situation where you have to sell it at a point when the value is down. So while it is an asset and an investment, I personally believe you should think of it first as where you are living, not as an investment. At the same time, you do have to think about things like how long you're going to live there and what the cost is going to be for you to get out of that home and perhaps into your next one if you want to move up or downsize, whatever that might be. So the general rule of thumb that I have heard is if you can't plan on staying in a place that you buy for more than 5 years, it's probably not worth it for you to buy, and you should consider renting instead. Because there are many more costs when you are moving out of and selling a home than there are when you are moving in. So when you are selling a home and moving out, you are still going to have costs like moving costs. You're going to have costs, to get a lawyer to do some of the things around mortgages and transfers and titles and all the rest of it. You are probably going to have costs for getting your house ready to sell. No matter how good you've been at maintaining it, there's probably a few extra things you need to do that you can put in to get a higher value. I know I did that when I was selling my home, and you do get that money back out again if it sells and you do it smartly, but there is going to be that initial outlay. You also have to pay a realtor, and I'm sort of pausing there because a lot of people are doing realtor free sales like ComFree and stuff like that. When I sold, I used a realtor, and I used a realtor for a few reasons, and you can look into this on your own. For me, I was selling a home by myself. I wanted somebody to guide me through that process. I wanted somebody to be very upfront with me about what things I should do to the home to get the best value out of it. And as it turned out for me, there were a few issues along the way to selling, and she was the best advocate and the best negotiator for me, full stop. She was totally worth what she was paid. But you are paying a realtor when you are a seller, and you are paying them, at least where I am. It is negotiable. Where I am, I was paying them 5% of the sale price of the home. And if you are somewhere like Ontario, also take into account that you are paying taxes on top of that 5%. It's like buying a service. So it ends up being 5% plus GST, PST, that kind of thing. So factor that into how much you are actually going to get back out of the house again. I should also make a point if you are buying a new condo that a lot of people don't know. If you're buying a condo off of plans or a condo that is currently being built, there is a point where it is owned by the corporation who built the condo and a point where it transfers over to the people who live in the condo corporation. In between that time, so say I bought this condo when it was being built and I moved in here, but the building was still being finished, things were being done. It can be, a year or so until it actually transfers from the company who built the building, the condo, to the condo corporation. In that time, you are not paying down your mortgage, you are paying rent to the corporation who built the condo. So you should know that it may take some time if you buy a new condo before you actually start paying down your mortgage and paying towards owning it. The final financial aspect you should consider is the one huge benefit to owning your own home or condo, is that you are going to, if you have done everything properly, pay it off at some point and be mortgage free. So in the long run, you are going to have a place to live where you don't have to pay a mortgage. And that is going to free up all kinds of money in your budget. It is going to be something that you own. It is never going to be free for you to live there because there's still property tax and fees and maintenance and all the rest of it, but a large expense will be out of your budget, and that is a big financial incentive. A lot of people say that financially, if you are purely looking at the finance, in the long run, it is always worth it to buy your own place. I don't dispute that. I think that financial is not the only, I think there's psychological pieces in there as well, but just that final piece to say that, at some point you will pay off a mortgage and you will own the place for yourself free and clear. So let's move on to those psychological aspects that I talked about, because to me, these are significant and should be considered as well. And the first one is the one that I just mentioned, which is how important is it to you to own your own home, to feel that this is yours and you own it. If you're standing out in your backyard, that you own that land. It is yours, and especially once you pay off the mortgage, it is, you own it. It is yours. And there's a psychological aspect to that I personally have not felt so far. I never got to the point of paying off my mortgage, but that is very important for some people. The other part of it is that you can make all the choices there to yourself. Now, if you live somewhere where there is you're in a condo or there is a homeowners association, something like that, it may limit you a little bit, but you can decorate the house however you want. You can do whatever kinds of additions or renovations that you want to do because it is your home. That is a very significant psychological factor. The other side of the coin is, are you the kind of person who is going to enjoy being a homeowner? So do you like doing yard work? Do you like doing gardening? Are you handy? Do you like doing repairs? If you own a home, a significant amount of your time, maybe not significant, but some of your time is going to be spent taking care of the house. It is most likely your most significant investment. You need to take care of it. And if I am renting here, which I am, and something goes wrong with the plumbing or the electricity or something, I just call my landlord. It is their job to take care of it. If you own the place, you are dealing with maintenance people, you are dealing with coordinating things, you are taking care of the place. Do you want to be outside every morning in the summer mowing the lawn? Do you want to be pulling weeds? Do you want to be, making sure there aren't any bugs getting into your house? Do you want to be coordinating the people who are coming to do renovations? Is that something that is satisfying to you, or is it adding a lot of stress on your life? From the way that I talk about this, you can probably tell how I feel. I discovered I was not a natural gardener. I discovered that I really stress if I have to take care of something, and not saying I don't take care of this place, I do, but it's a different weight on your mind when it's all on you. Also, when I was owning a place by myself as a single woman, and also my home was significantly a distance from my job because that's where I could afford a home, coordinating renovations, things like that, going back and forth to the house, it was a lot. The final piece I'll say around psychological factors is personal to myself, and that is, what would I own if I wanted to own something? So if you own a house, there are all those parts I talked about yard work and maintenance, and I don't love those things. I don't get personal satisfaction from that, that makes up for the stress that I feel doing those things. On the other hand, if you live in a condo, if you buy a condo, you have to depend on your condo board to make decisions that are good for you. So are you okay with giving up that kind of control for, once again, something that is your most significant asset? I would find that a little hard to do. I have lived for a number of years now in buildings that are condos where I'm renting the condo, and I see things around the building and I think, oh, that would really bother me if I was an owner, but there's a different mindset to it if I am renting here because I don't feel that deep personal investment in the place. As I said, I'm a good renter. I keep everything lovely. I am very good, but it's just a very different mental tuning. I've rambled on now for a while, talked about a number of different things. Basically, the point I want to make here is go into how you want to approach your life and your living situation with your eyes wide open. Don't take it for granted that buying a house is always the best way to go. And if you do choose to do that, make sure you are completely aware of every aspect financially and psychologically that you are going to be getting yourself into. I wish you all the best. If you have not yet watched my Money Honey series, once again, I will put a link to that down below and also at the end of this video. If you've not subscribed, please consider doing so. And if you liked this, give it a thumbs up. Lets me know that people are watching. Thank you so much, and I will see you again in my next video. Bye.